Hollywood Brown, likely out for most, if not all, of the 2024 NFL season, the Chiefs' wide receiver lineup has definitely taken a hit. Another injury in that group could spell big trouble, and that's why some believe the Chiefs might be looking to trade for a wide receiver before the deadline. So, we've got a lot to talk about today, from potential trades to the Chiefs' training staff's response to Ravens pass rusher Kyle Van Noy, and even the Bengals players still running their mouths. But first, let's address the Hollywood Brown situation. This is definitely a shakeup for the Chiefs' offense, but there are still reasons for Chiefs fans to feel confident about the upcoming game against Cincinnati. Before I dive into that, I want to touch on the Kyle Van Noy issue from the Ravens game, which I mentioned in my last video. Van Noy voiced his frustration on his podcast about the delay in medical treatment during the game, saying it took almost a full quarter to get an eye doctor, an ophthalmologist, to check his injury. He went on to give the Chiefs medical staff an F rating, much like the team did last year in their NFLPA survey, and a D+ the year before. Today, Rick Burkholder, the Chiefs' VP of Sports Medicine and Performance, responded. He pointed out that it's not a requirement to have an ophthalmologist or a dentist readily available at games, though both teams have access to those specialists. After Van Noy's podcast made waves on social media, Burkholder reached out to Baltimore's training staff and even exchanged messages with Ravens head coach John Harbaugh to clear things up. Burkholder also mentioned that right after the injury, the Ravens doctor initially said they didn't need an ophthalmologist. However, after Van Noy went to the locker room, they changed their mind and asked for one. From the moment they asked for the specialist to when the doctor arrived took just 12 minutes. So, while Van Noy seemed upset, it's clear the Chiefs staff acted quickly. Given that it took 12 minutes for the Ravens to call the Chiefs, and the Chiefs to get the doctor down from the stands, it doesn't seem like much of a delay. Now that you've got more details on the situation, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Was Van Noy being overly dramatic, or do you think there's more to the story? Moving on, Burkholder also gave some insight into Hollywood Brown's injury. Unfortunately, it seems like he could be out for a while. I'll discuss what that means for the Chiefs' next steps. As for my weekly picks, I had to go with a few safe bets. I picked CeeDee Lamb as my lock for this week, needing just half a yard to win. Easy. I also picked Pacheco for more than 85.5 rushing and receiving yards combined. He got 78 last week, and if he'd caught that missed touchdown pass from Mahomes, he would have had way more. Plus, the Bengals just allowed 120 rushing yards to Ramondre Stevenson. Next, I'm picking Xavier Worthy to have a reception longer than 21.5 yards. He had a 35-yard catch last week, so I just need him to pull off something similar. As for Mahomes, I think he'll pass for more than 271.5 yards. He had 291 against the Ravens, and their secondary is better than Cincinnati's. Lastly, I'm choosing Joe Burrow to complete more than 23.5 passes. He had 21 last week, despite a few drops and New England dominating time of possession. With Burrow throwing more short and intermediate passes due to his wrist, I think this one's a safe bet. To wrap things up, Burkholder gave a bit more clarity on why Hollywood Brown was just now placed on IR, even though his injury happened on August 10th. Initially, the team believed he was healing well, but after a recent MRI, they saw that the bone had shifted. After consulting with several specialists, they decided it was too risky for Brown to continue playing without surgery. It's a tough break for the team, but hopefully they can figure things out going forward. In summary, after Hollywood Brown's injury, the first MRI taken a week later showed that things were healing as expected. Everything seemed to be in place, and rehab was going well with no pain. However, a more recent MRI revealed that the dislocated joint had moved, which was a setback. Multiple doctors confirmed that the best course of action for Brown to continue playing in the NFL was surgery to properly reset the SC joint. That's why surgery is scheduled for Monday, and why he was officially placed on IR today. Credit to Jordan Schultz from Bleacher Report for first reporting the details. At first, we thought Hollywood would be on IR for just 4 weeks and return after the Chiefs' Week 6 bye. Sadly, now that surgery is required, the situation looks much more serious. James Palmer of Underdog mentioned there's real concern that Brown could miss the entire season, and Soren Petro backed this up by saying the recovery timeline is more like 3 months, best case scenario. If that's true, we could see Brown return around Christmas, maybe in time for the Week 16 game against the Texans on December 21st. But worst case, it could be season-ending, as Pro Football doc David Chow pointed out. He said he isn't aware of any NFL athlete who has had SC joint surgery. If this is an open surgery with reconstruction, it might mean Brown's season is over. There's a small chance that if the surgery is less invasive, he might return, but the outlook doesn't look great. This injury is a huge blow to Brown, who had an impressive offseason working with Mahomes, and the two looked fantastic in training camp. But unfortunately, his season ended before it really started, with the dislocation happening on the first play of the Chiefs' preseason game. After the news broke, Brown took to social media, expressing his disappointment and frustration, but also shared that his faith in God has helped him stay positive, knowing the situation will eventually pass. Now that Brown is on IR, the big question is, what are the Chiefs going to do about their wide receiver room? Thankfully, they managed to bring back Juju Smith-Schuster, and GM Brett Veach said they reached out to Juju's agent as soon as Hollywood got hurt. While Juju isn't a direct replacement for Hollywood, he can play a similar role in the middle of the field, especially if his knees hold up. He was a reliable target for Mahomes just 2 years ago, so this could work out. However, if the Chiefs suffer another injury in their wide receiver group, they could be in real trouble. This has led to speculation that the Chiefs might consider a trade before the deadline, possibly targeting a struggling team looking to offload talent. One name that has been mentioned is Amari Cooper from the Browns. Analyst Brett Coleman suggested Cooper could be a good option as a true X receiver, and Seth Kaiser from KC Sports Network agreed. What do you think? Should the Chiefs make a move and trade for a wide receiver before the deadline, just in case injuries hit again? Or do you think the current squad has enough depth to manage without a major addition? They do have players like Nico Remigio, Justin Ross, and Montrell Washington on the practice squad, and any of them could get called up. With Brown on IR, there's now an open spot on the 53-man roster, so someone like Justin Ross could be promoted. If Remigio gets activated, he could handle kick and punt returns, which would allow Mecole Hardman to focus more on offense. There are options, but with Hollywood out for the season, it's definitely a concern. In my opinion, the Chiefs should at least explore trade options before the deadline. It might not be absolutely necessary right now, but if another injury hits, the wide receiver room won't look great. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Before I move on, let's talk about Amari Cooper. Some people think he'd be a great fit for the Chiefs if the Browns continue to struggle. Cooper is 30 years old, still has some fuel left, and is coming off multiple 1,000-yard seasons. Plus, he'll be a free agent next year. If the Browns are doing poorly, they might consider trading him to get something in return instead of losing him in free agency. While there are other options out there, Andy Reid mentioned in a press conference that he's happy with the depth they already have at wide receiver. So maybe nothing will happen, but with Hollywood Brown out for the season, it's something to think about. Now, speaking of the Chiefs' wide receiver room, Bengals defensive back Cam Taylor-Britt had a lot to say about Xavier Worthy. When asked about what Worthy brings to the Chiefs' offense, he replied, "He can just run straight." But Taylor-Britt might have forgotten that last year, Rashee Rice burned him for 67 yards by simply running straight in the Chiefs' biggest play of the season. It's hard to understand why Bengals players feel the need to talk trash about Kansas City when they haven't achieved much in the last 2 seasons. Ja'Marr Chase even declared the Bengals as the team to beat in the AFC, but everyone knows who the real champions are. While Bengals players are busy talking, Chiefs players like Rashee Rice are focused on their game. Rice said, "We just let our play do the talking," which is a perfect reflection of Kansas City's mindset. So why should you feel confident about the Chiefs winning against the Bengals this Sunday? Well, for starters, the Bengals are coming off a rough loss to the Patriots, one of the weakest teams in the NFL. Joe Burrow's wrist is still bothering him, despite what he says. In Week 1, he was clearly struggling with stiffness and swelling, especially in the fourth quarter. Also, the Bengals haven't had a strong start to the season under coach Zach Taylor with a 1-10 record in the first 2 weeks of past seasons. Burrow was sacked 3 times last week and only completed 1 pass over 20 yards. Ja'Marr Chase, Burrow's go-to receiver, skipped all of camp and preseason, so he's still getting back into sync with Burrow. Plus, the Bengals' defense isn't looking great either. They allowed the Patriots to run for 170 yards last week, and their starting safety Geno Stone appeared on the injury report with a back issue. Defensive tackle B.J. Hill and tight end Tanner Hudson are both doubtful, and wide receiver T. Higgins likely won't play due to a hamstring injury. Without Higgins, Burrow is missing his second-best option. On the other hand, the Chiefs are a much stronger team than the Patriots. Their defense, led by Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, is going to be hungry for action. The Chiefs' secondary, including Trent McDuffie, is solid, and while linebacker Nick Bolton had an off game last week, he'll be ready to bounce back. Offensively, the Chiefs are a top 5 unit, unlike New England, who ranks near the bottom. Sure, the Chiefs will need to watch their left side, as rookie Kingsley Suamataia will face a tough challenge against Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals' secondary is solid too, but KC has had extra rest days. Juju is more comfortable in the system, and Mahomes is locked in. Rashee Rice is coming off a 100-yard game, and Travis Kelce is still Travis Kelce. With all that, plus the game being at Arrowhead, the Chiefs are in a great position to win. I'm predicting a Chiefs victory, 31-24, with Cincinnati scoring a late touchdown in garbage time. Of course, the Bengals have been a strong team for a reason, but I feel great about this game. Let me know your score predictions in the comments, and don't forget to use code HBTC when signing up with Underdog for your pick'ems. Until next time, let's go. How about those Chiefs?